Meditation, mindfulness, climbing, Zen, martial arts, all these things have been part of my life for a long time. And I want to talk about how they connect. So today we're going to be talking about mindfulness, climbing, meditation, how these things interact. So first thing I want to start off with is I did notice another video that recently came out very similar to this. I did not get a chance to watch it yet, so apologize if there's some overlap, but I doubt there'll be too much because we're different people. That said, I have so many things to say about mindfulness and climbing, and it's appropriate here in the yoga studio. So this is a place, obviously yoga is a mindful movement connection. It's something I did a little bit in the past. I do a little bit different stretching systems now. But I really believe there's a space for mindfulness in all movements. Whether it's a martial arts movement or a climbing movement or yoga or a lack of movement, a stillness that you might find seated or in like a Zen practice. Mindfulness shows up in all of these. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about mindfulness and climbing because this kind of goes back to the core of what this channel really does focus on and how we bring this peace and mindfulness to everything that I do. Mindfulness can mean a lot of things. So let's firstly define that. Mindfulness is quite literally being mindful of what you are doing. Right? And I emphasize the value of mindfulness to people because in the case of climbing, there's a lot you need to be mindful of. Now, this also applies to just about anything that you do, right? It could apply to disc golf, it could apply to meditation, it could apply to a lot of different things. And for me, I want to talk about the things that have actually benefited my practice and kind of how they connect. So I'm going to go through 3 areas that I think could be really beneficial for you in terms of mindfulness and what have helped me at least. As well, I'm going to have a bonus tip at the end for you, so stick around for that. So I could have a lot to say about just meditation in general, things of that nature, but that could probably be several videos and I don't know that that's really the direction this channel's been going. So I want to focus in on the aspect of meditation, though, that can be really valuable for climbers. So for me, very kind of simple setup, right? Just sitting one leg in front of the other. You can have a cushion underneath if you want, and that's just a comfortable seated position. Any seated position works. You can do this on an airplane. Right, you can do this while waiting for an airplane, which is a very common place for a lot of people to do it. The thing I think will add a lot of value for people when you're looking at meditation in general is maybe just the simplest thing, right, which is more awareness. And I talked about how this can work in the climbing space, but you have to consider too that practicing awareness outside of climbing will lead to more awareness inside of climbing. So I actually recommend at least a focusing on the breath thing to pretty much anybody that's taking up climbing or any serious sport. Right, you can actually rest between climbs and you can use that as a meditative moment. Brings your heart rate down, kind of calms you down in between climbs if that's your goal to do. I know some people like to keep their heart rate up between climbs. It just depends on the session you're doing. But that just seated peacefulness can be really important. I think the only important things that I consider there is just that I am in a grounded position. This gym has some really cool chairs, so you could be in a grounded position in a chair. You could be, I like kneeling on the mats a lot, just because that seiza position is familiar to me from martial arts. And otherwise, just finding that peace in between those climbs, that's your meditation application. When you're going into a meditation or focus on the breath, really that's all you're doing is just focusing on the breath. It can help to make the breath longer on the exhale than on the inhale. But that said, that's just one trick that's helped me along the way to focus on the breath. And this will also increase your awareness of breath while climbing, which there's a lot of patterning to movements and a lot of thought to that a lot of people talk about. So more awareness. I mentioned breathing out versus breathing in, breathing out a little bit longer, breathing in a little bit shorter as a way to focus, but that's also kind of the whole idea behind flute. So the Japanese flute, the shakuhachi, I don't want to give a ton of instruction because honestly I'm not a teacher in this space, I'm very much still learning. But it's quite fascinating, and from, again, a climbing standpoint or just an athletic standpoint in general, the practice that I do pretty much daily, whenever possible, is about 10 minutes of playing a particular note, which is the note that's played with all the holes closed up, and just refining and keeping that note really precise and holding it. This really has helped me increase my lung capacity overall, and it's helped my running, it's helped my climbing, it's helped around. So I don't mention the flute a whole lot here, but this might be one of the quick mentions that I'll make of it as we go along my journey, because it's something I do. There's a couple other things like that I do, but I don't necessarily talk about on the channel a whole lot. This is really important in terms of breathing while climbing. A lot of people will sometimes hold their breath, or you get kind of raggedy and you don't pay attention. And one of the top things that has helped a lot of people in my experience when I've been climbing with them is a reminder sometimes just to breathe. If you just remember to breathe while you're doing these things, a lot of times your breath gets into the motions and things like that. Now, from a technical perspective, and this is my understanding, I like to approach this very similar to a strength exercise. So if you're gonna have to clamp down hard, right, I wanna be able to actually breathe out when I clamp down. So I might hold my breath a little bit. However, keep in mind, when you're holding your breath, you are gonna limit your range of motion a little bit. So if the catch isn't the hard part, the reach is the hard part, you may have to go breathe out to do the catch. Anyhow, got very technical there, but the idea being quite simple, right, is to breathe out when you're looking to do your hardest effort, because that gives you the most reach, it gives you the most power in that moment, just like in any kind of isometric exercise. So something to think about, can be valuable, and I hope that helps. So one other thing that I think can be really beneficial to climbers in the instrument space, this can be guitar, this can be a flute, this can be any instrument that has like fine motor function of the hands. This is really important because as a climber, right, you're used to doing all these small motions and movements, things like that. But if you're not comfortable doing that in another space, you actually may not have that level of precision. And so this level of precision of, knowing how to half hold versus cover completely or things like that, or in the case of guitars, right, the picking and the fretting, all of that, that can be a good practice for your climbing because it brings up that level of awareness again. All right, third thing I want to talk about, and in some ways the most important, the concept in Zen is called kinhin, or meditation movement. Walking is often how it's expressed, although it's expressed in other ways. And I take this perspective because all movement can be mindful. And in fact, one thing that I've seen a lot of people go through as they improve at climbing is they improve in their mindfulness. So let's define mindfulness in terms of the climbing movement itself. Okay, so when you're first starting, a lot of times you're going to have an awareness probably of your hands a lot and a little bit of your feet. And as you expand, you get an awareness of your arms, right? You know whether they're tensed or straightened and relaxed. You know where your shoulders are. You start building up an awareness of the chest, the back, the abs. Are the hips twisting? Am I in the right range? Because all of these kinds of things, well, where's my pelvis angled? These elements, along with the knees and the feet, all add up to being aware of what you're doing. And in my experience, and again, this is just my personal experience, the higher the grade goes, the higher the level of mindfulness to a degree, but also a lack thereof, or that kind of higher level no mind, if you will, because there becomes a point at which you have to know what you're doing, but a lot of times you don't have time to think about it in the really hard levels. You have to kind of instinctively do it, or read into it, set your body up for it, plan for it. Route reading is definitely an important part of this concept, but just generally being mindful of how you move as you climb, where everything is. The deeper you get into that, the better you'll get.
All right, so I did promise a bonus tip. This is really interesting because I always like to connect things back to the channel, right? And the channel is called Go to Zero, and this is a concept in mindfulness. It comes up in Zen, it comes up in the martial arts, and you might find it in a lot of other places as well. But the idea is getting to a zero space where energy acting on you, you feel it. And this is actually my tip for climbing too, especially as you're newer, is I talked earlier about the awareness, but making sure you take your energy down to zero when you're starting your climb. Later on, there's some people that'll argue there's emotion, there's energy, you can use that energy, and that's good. But if you don't have the ability to control it or bring it to zero, you don't really have the ability to use that yet. So I would start with go to zero. That said, if this is a video that you enjoyed, please don't forget to whack that like and subscribe button down below. It definitely helps our channel. We appreciate it. We got some more fun stuff coming up very, very soon, so stay tuned.